Early morning, December 1st, 1948, a couple walking along Somerton Beach in South Australia spots a man slumped against the seawall. He is wearing a tailored suit and tie, and he is completely unresponsive. When police arrive, they find an immediate investigative dead end. The man is impeccably dressed, but every single clothing label has been meticulously removed. The coroner suspects poisoning by an unknown toxin, yet the man's fingerprints and dental records match nothing in global databases. Months pass with no progress. Then a pathologist notices something the police missed: a tiny secret pocket sewn deep into the waistband of the man's trousers. Inside that pocket is a tightly rolled scrap of paper. It bears two words printed in an elaborate, archaic font: Tamam Shud, Persian for "it is finished." A dead man with no name, carrying a theatrical final message. This absence of normal identifiers allowed a simple tragedy to transform into a puzzle that demanded a grand explanation. Investigators linked the Tamam Shud scrap to a rare edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam found in a nearby car. As you can see here, a rectangular hole was torn from the final page of this copy. Under ultraviolet light, the back cover of the book revealed an unlisted phone number and 5 lines of jumbled handwritten letters. The phone number belonged to Jo Thompson, a nurse living a 5-minute walk from the beach. When shown a plaster mask of the dead man, she reportedly looked as if she were about to faint, yet she denied ever knowing him. In the paranoid climate of late 1948, authorities connected these findings. They theorized the jumbled letters were an unbreakable Soviet cipher, and the nurse was a double agent involved in a Cold War assassination. Without a name to anchor the case, investigators of the 1940s filled the vacuum with the era's greatest fear: international espionage. That theory held for 7 decades, until Professor Derek Abbott used a 2020 solution. He extracted DNA from hairs that had been caught in the 1949 plaster cast of the man's face. To find him, Abbott and genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick built a family tree of 4,000 names, searching for a common ancestor in modern DNA databases. By filling this tree, the team mathematically narrowed possibilities down to a match among living cousins. The result was definitive. The Somerton Man was Carl Charles Webb, a 43-year-old electrical engineer from Melbourne. After 70 years of guesswork, a single molecule provided the one thing codebreakers and the FBI couldn't: a name. Once the identity was confirmed, the strange artifacts that fueled 70 years of conspiracy theories collapsed into reality. Webb's clothes were likely hand-me-downs from his brother-in-law, Thomas Keane. This explains why the name Keane is written inside the tie and on the man's luggage. The unbreakable cipher in the back of the poetry book also has a more pedestrian explanation when viewed through Webb's habits. Historical records show Webb was a frequent gambler. These jumbled lines weren't a secret code. They were likely the first letters of horses he was betting on. The presence of the Rubaiyat and its Tamam Shud scrap is explained by Webb's 1951 divorce papers. His wife described a moody man who wrote death-obsessed verse. Carl Webb was no Soviet operative. He was an instrument maker, seen here working with the complex electrical gauges and wiring of the era. Every spy element of the case had an earthly explanation once the man's real identity was known. Carl Webb's final hours represent a stark psychological tragedy. He was a man whose marriage had collapsed and whose life had become a series of dark, lonely movements. He seems to have modeled his death on the melancholy poetry of the Rubaiyat, turning his end into a piece of theater to declare that he was finished. Some questions remain, specifically the exact poison used and the deep anxiety displayed by Jo Thompson. For 70 years, the spy theory flourished because it turned a quiet, lonely tragedy into a grand, global mystery. The Somerton Man was a canvas for our own collective imagination. By stripping away the myth, DNA gave us back the truth of a fragile human life.